All right. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cut and Splice. Uh, this is Jason,
And Matt,
And this is Gil.
and tonight we're going to be talking about the Hindi movie RRR. And I had hoped that my friend Mike might be able to join us, but it turns out that with a 3-hour time difference, it's not going to work out. But he introduced me to this movie, and it's I believe, if I'm got my information correct here, I kind of gathered a lot of stuff from different sources and videos and stuff like that, but I believe this was one of the biggest and most successful Indian films ever made. I believe it was just came out last year, 2022, last March. And it's a pretty big, spectacular movie.
So how did he sell it to you, when he introduced
How did
you
he
to?
sell it to me? I think he said something to the effect of, you got to see this movie. There's this crazy, batshit crazy movie where this guy throws a leopard at somebody. No,
That'll get your attention.
he told me, he's like, we were working at his house on some projects, and he and his wife kept joking around. They'd be walking around and they'd be going like nacho, 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 which made a lot of sense to them as an inside joke, because they had seen this movie and I had not. And we just started kind of talking about scenes and how crazy this movie was and stuff like that. And we just found some time to watch it one day, and he's like, "We're gonna put that movie on," and I was like, "All right, cool." And it's a pretty crazy movie.
So this is before he went to the East Coast, like it's,
Yeah.
you
This
watched
was,
it together.
just about a week or two before.
Oh, I see. Cool.
So yeah, it's a pretty popular movie right now. So it's not like, we're obviously far from being trailblazing, people here reviewing this movie, but it's kind of a pretty big hit, I guess. But it's this big giant production, this Indian movie. And I guess they say that the movie, the 3 R's are supposed to stand for, I might get this in the wrong order. I'm sorry for my mistakes here, but I think it's rise, roar, and revolt. But I actually saw an interesting video the other day that also said that there's kind of an additional meaning to it, that if you live over there and you're familiar with their cinema and stuff like that, it actually has a kind of an alternate meaning involving the names of the director and the 2 leads.
Oh, so that's why they kept it to the RRR.
I think it was a smart marketing campaign.
Yeah, it's like those 2 actors with the director or something.
Yeah, the direct. So I just want to stress this. This is not something that I did a bunch of research on or anything like that. I just heard somebody else say this. So if this is totally wrong, someone feel free to let me know at some point in time in the future. But it was a really cool concept what they explained in this video. They said the director, whose name is S.S. Rajamouli, and I'm sure many times over in this episode I'm going to be mispronouncing names, so just throwing that out there. I guess he's one of the most successful directors over there. I think they said in the top 5 or 10 most successful movies they've ever done, he directed like 3 of them or something. So he's this like huge mega star director, and then these 2 guys are like top of their game, big action star guys. So the analogy that this guy said would be like in America, so like imagine if in the late 90s, well before they had ever done The Expendables or that stupid Escape Plan movie or anything like that, he said, imagine if there was going to be this big action movie, Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and then it just so happened that it was also going to be this big, not just a silly action movie, but like a really significant, substantial, film, and then you find out that like Spielberg is directing it or something like that. So then you've got like they would probably in America it would have been SSS,
Yeah, and
on
it
the
would be like
posters.
the War of Independence or something.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, exactly. And then there's the other aspects of it, which is like the all the cultural aspects that play into that as well. But yeah, that's what they were talking about. Is he's just trying to make an analogy about what it would be like in America. That's what the significance of the letters are.
Yeah, because I'm very bad at research. I'm lazy like that. I like to keep it that way.
Yeah,
That's
me
my
too.
goal. But of course, I have a less lazy wife. So she was we were researching things kind of together, and mostly her. But yeah, she said she said that apparently this is based on true characters from the revolution. There were these two revolutionaries that have a lot of myth about them, that they're very strong and they did some crazy things, but they never met, apparently historically, and they both died like years after the revolution, but they died not of natural causes, like maybe they got assassinated or something like that later on.
Hmm.
But in this movie, and apparently the director said that he drew on a bit of like Inglorious Bastards and stuff. Basically, the idea of revisionist history, to
Yeah.
go back and kind of like re revise history to make it even more satisfying, because you bring
Yeah.
these two great characters from the revolution and you put them together, and not only that, but they kick a lot of ass and
Yeah.
stuff. Maybe even more so than they actually did. I don't know, depending. But you make them even
Maybe
more
more
legendary in the
so.
movie. Who knows? They might
Maybe,
in real
I,
life,
I, I guess.
or not in the same spectacular way that this movie did, but at least like they might have fought some crazy battles
Yeah.
with like
Yeah.
Um, but in any case,
That
yeah.
scene
So
with
it's
the tiger. I mean, come on.
yeah, no, but generally it is a very cool movie. It's this idea of also sort of like magical realism, as there's a
Yeah.
bit of it in there, where it was like using historical parts that happened and mixing it with fantastical things that are almost magical, like
Yeah.
completely. I mean, I think that this movie definitely goes into like the realm of the impossible many
Sure.
times. Um, and to just create a very satisfying uh, thing, which I found that interesting. I guess that to me that would probably be most of the discussion today, is like what is this? Like, can this actually work? Because I don't think what this movie does can always work. Sometimes it could just become so ridiculous that
Of
that
course.
it loses you. So it's finding that balance. Like this was definitely more extreme than Inglorious Bastards. um, it's on the Sergio Leone spectrum. He also went extreme, but this is like going overboard. And to me, the closest thing I would compare it to like an American cinema would be 300.
Yeah, there were some definite 300 moments that reminded me of stuff like that.
Yeah, that basically taking something and making it so over the top, yet consistent, that it,
Yeah.
it makes for a very satisfying escapism. Like it's just okay. I get this. This is gonna be ridiculous. We're gonna have some like, crouching tiger, hidden dragon type of stuff here. Like they're gonna be flying in the air and stuff. But like, I'll roll with it. I'll roll with it, and it's pretty satisfying. Like it's got some history there. Like the fact that Diana like watched it with me, that's already something. Obviously, she closed her eyes for half the movie because she doesn't like violence. But the fact that there's something for everybody here, even the love stories and the saving the sister and like going for the sister, and all these elements of the story that make it more than just blood and gore and action.
Yeah. Well, Matt, what did you think?
It's hard for me to really put into words. Like, the funny thing is, I was kind of thinking that I would say I was pleasantly surprised, but I actually immediately backtracked that and thought about the other Bollywood films that I've seen, and actually, it's exactly what I expected in so many ways. And it's such an interesting thing because the first Bollywood film I saw was back in film school, a movie called Sholay, which is basically like The Good and the Bad, the Ugly meets Game of Death meets Singing in the Rain or something. I mean, this is like it's one of those things where a movie, at least as far as I can tell, pretty much everything out of Bollywood is follows this formula of it's 3 hours long and it's always a musical.
With song and dance numbers.
Yeah. The only thing is like the last Bollywood movie that I saw in theaters was like a superhero movie called Raw One, and that movie kind of took me aback back then. This was probably like 2008 or 9 or something, and it was a Bollywood movie, and I think it was a good 30-40 minutes into the movie before they had their first song and dance number. And I was like, oh, this. And for the first 40 minutes of the movie, I was like, oh, this is a Bollywood movie. Are they breaking that mold? Like, oh, no, they just waited a really long time to do it. And then this one, the first song and dance number was an hour in.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that just kind of it is okay. Here's the thing. The thing that I find fascinating about geez, you know what? I'm going to save that until the spoiler area.
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, there's a lot for American filmmakers to learn from movies like this,
That's
and
a good way of putting it.
it's I mean it's beautifully shot, although clearly digital.
Very
It's it is a great mixture of style and substance, spectacle and substance. I think Truffaut would have liked it.
I think so.
And there is, and because of its length, because the movie is 3 hours, you do get to have that balance of real human connection and also having like crazy action sequences that last like 20 minutes, and it doesn't break the pace of the film.
Yeah.
So I think it's really well directed, well paced, well written. I thought it was very well acted. Um, Even by the child actor, it's very hard to find good child actors, and they found one. So yeah, I think very highly of it.
One thing I was going to say too about the research is apparently this is more of a Tollywood movie. Because I guess the
Yeah.
original language was like Telugu, which is because they're
So
like India is so big that there's different regions of.
right.
I'm gonna be called a racist now, aren't I?
No, it's okay. I mean,
No. So
obviously
okay.
Bollywood I think is the biggest because it's like yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did not know of this as a thing
Yeah.
until this movie, and
Mhm.
when I looked it up and I saw that, I had never heard the word Tollywood, and then I found out there's like 8 or something different types or something like that of the different regions
Mhm.
and a different word for each type or something like that, and I was like, all right, well, that's cool and stuff. I'm probably not going to remember that. I'll be honest. I mean, if I would hope nobody would be upset by the fact that I'm probably not going to go figure out exactly what region every single one of these things comes from. But I mean, if Americans demanded that everybody called the films that were produced and shot in New York something different than the movies that were made in Hollywood, I think that people would be would probably look at that a little differently too. But
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I was just like, wait a minute, there's how many different types? Well, come on.
Well, I think it's more that like sometimes a movie is not a Hollywood movie; it might be an indie movie, that kind of thing. Like
But
where it's
that's just implying a certain level of like production value and mainstream appeal and things like that nature. I mean, like there's a lot of connotations with indie film and stuff like that, but none of that involves where it was made. There's plenty of indie films that are shot in Los Angeles or
No, but
in
it's
Hollywood specifically.
it's also a completely different language. I mean, it's all obviously
Oh, I
variations
know
of,
that. I
yeah.
know that. Yeah.
Which
I know.
interestingly on Netflix, for some reason, like Portuguese was the
Yeah, I saw
default
that too.
language, and then you can change it to Hindu, but the original language is actually not available.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead. Sorry.
and it just sounded very dubbed, and I was wondering if like maybe they were going for this like Sergio Leone, like
Yeah.
dubbed after the fact type of style. It actually it makes for a very surreal like audio too.
I thought so too. The one of the videos I saw actually mentioned that. They said that's another aspect of why they went with a simple title like RRR, not just the fact that it has that nice little like tie-in to the director and the names of the director and the two leads, but also because putting a simple title like RRR on it helped this movie be more marketable all across the country, where there's like I would say at least several different languages being spoken, and so they said up until and then also the content of the movie too, that the fact that the one of the characters is this kind of he's from the sticks, he's they call it, they use a term in the movie. What do they say? They say not a villager. I lost it. I didn't rewatch any of the scenes where they talk about it, but the term that they use to describe him, where he's living out in the foresty areas, not the cities, anyway,
The rural.
yeah, like rural areas and stuff. But anyway, I guess there's the fact that one of them comes from that kind of an area and the other is not, and there's just a lot of aspects of the movie altogether where they knew when they made this, they were like, we can really swing for the fences and get a wide, broad appeal. We can really get everybody on board with this movie, like across the country.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I wonder how many of these movies there are. That's what's nice about discovering these, is that you're like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't miss this. This is ridiculous.
I don't know. I've never seen any of this guy's other films and anything like that. So I mean, I don't have any problem just switching right or jumping right over to our spoiler thing. But
yeah. I mean, ratings wise,
oh yeah,
yeah, I think I would. I was on the fence between like a 7 and an 8, but I do need to give it an 8. I think for, yeah, just for the mixture of everything together, and yes, it wasn't boring. It warranted 3-hour epic type of presentation, and even though I'm not a huge fan of going that overboard with some of the stuff, like these kind of like Django Unchained style. But I feel like there was more substance to this, more Inglorious Bastards than Django Unchained, which is a good thing in my book. So yeah, that's why I think I would give it an 8.
I also would struggled between where I'd put it between like a 7 or an 8. When I watch moments that make me roll my eyes and I'm just like, oh my gosh, really? It makes me think it's definitely like a 7. But then when I see the really good scenes that I like a lot, I'm like, I might as well push this up to like an 8.
Well, I guess we're giving RRR an 888. I mean,
Oh, it's a very enchanting movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I laughed, I cried, yes, I did cry. I'm not that callous of an asshole. Uh, the action scenes were cool, even when they went really over the top, and I was like, "Oh, come on!" It's still fun. I mean, who the fuck cares? So yeah, it's and they kind of they did a good job of establishing the world that we're in very early, and yeah. I think that it was very well made, and I mean, honestly, I turned it on last night, having worked 3 consecutive days of over 12 hours, and I was going to work another day of over 12 hours. I figured I was going to split it into 2 bits, and I just couldn't turn it off. So I I watched it all the way through, and this morning really sucked.
Yikes.
But no, yeah, it'll keep your attention for 3 hours. Don't be put off by the runtime.
Yeah, no, and definitely as far as like sealing my recommendation, it's definitely something that if you maybe even if you don't like over the top movies, just watch this. Like see how over the top things can get to
That's a
the
nice way of putting it.
realm of absurd that it breaks the it just breaks the expectation, whether it's like the limits of like where you would like accept things to go and whether like how low of a tolerance you have for it. Like you just give up. Like this gets so ridiculous that you just give up and you let it wash over you. And that's I think what cinema should do. It's just that this does it in a way that rarely is done, with a movie. So yeah, I would say because I'm assuming a lot of people that might listen to this might not have seen it, though, like might discover it from this.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if they listen to
That'd
the
be
first
nice.
20 minutes, it'll be nice. But if not, yeah, maybe I can like I'll put the snippet of a clip before we post this.
With the
Anyways.
leopard.
Yeah. No, I mean like me saying this as the recommendation.
Okay.
Like just like go see it. Like even if you don't want to listen to the podcast, I just want you to see this thing because it's like ridiculous. It's more important than a podcast.
Yeah.
So we good to spoilers?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I guess Matt, you had something you were saving.
Well, yeah, I don't even know if well, I don't know if I actually have to spoil anything to get into it. I was just I thought that I was kind of deviating from the portion in our episodes where we just kind of talk about the quality of it rather than getting into analyzing it.
Oh yeah, but just 1 second, just
yeah.
a side note, forgot to say before the spoilers. It is funny that we all give it an 8 because on IMDb it's got an exactly 8.0. There's like no deviation. It's 107,000 like ratings, and it's got an exact 8. I think everybody gave this an 8.
So if all of us were to add our IMDb rating, it would still be an 8.
It will still be. It would not change. I think if we give it a 1, it wouldn't change. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
but yeah, and I don't think it's just this film. I think it's most of the Bollywood films that I've seen that push the willing suspension of disbelief further than most American cinema is willing to do, at least on a regular basis, especially in a movie where you're like where it's not like Fast and the Furious 7 or something, where you're just supposed to be sitting in the theater and turning your brain off. You don't turn your brain off in this movie, and you don't turn your brain off in most Indian films, but they always push the limits of willing suspension of disbelief further than I think most American comfort zones. And when you watch, I mean, particularly the action scenes in this movie, I was thinking about halfway through the movie that like the perfect action choreography for an American audience is probably something that would be done like this, like in India, only dialed back like 20% in terms of like going way over the top. And I mean, I think the Mission Impossible movies are probably the closest that we have in terms of like an American version of like, okay, we're going way over the top with how much these guys can do, but it's still kind of uh in that area where like it doesn't get the average American audience member to just be like, oh come on. Uh, but I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that Indian filmmakers should placate American audiences. They should not. I think that we should actually have a greater appreciation for what they're doing over there. And even I should have a greater appreciation for what they're doing over there. But I like my 3-hour movies to be brooding and dreary and Russian in general. But so this kind of broke the mold for me. But but I mean, it's something to learn from. It's something to really treat with a certain amount of reverence and respect. But anyway, that was my spiel.
I was surprised when I saw it. After like I said before, I talked with my friend Mike about the movie, at least numerous scenes and things like that, quite a bit. So I kind of had an idea of what I was getting into, but I was a little surprised by some of the more substantial scenes. I really like some of the things that they talk about and some of the sort of little things that they do in this movie. The very well, it's not the very first scene, but the first sequence of the movie where the small child is being purchased by the bad guys. There's a really great moment where let's see, the bad guy's name is Buxton.
Scott something.
Yeah, Ray Stevenson's character is Scott Buxton, but he there's a small Indian woman who's crying in front of their vehicle trying to get her child back, and this guy's about to execute her, and the guy comes up to him and kind of I don't know if I'd say he berates his soldier, but he gives him a talking to, because about how the value of what one of their bullets would have cost at the time, and how the bullet is far more, in his eyes, far more valuable than the person that they're about to execute. And he's basically telling him, just do something else, don't shoot them, and then how they use that whole that whole speech basically, and they bring it back at the end and everything, and it's just a very nicely put thing. It's a good way to really really make him and his wife seem pretty evil, but yeah, I don't know, it's I was surprised by a number of scenes that I thought were much better than I expected. And I, as a person who doesn't like musicals in general, we had a whole episode where we talked about the musicals that we all liked, and I told you guys I think that outside of Disney's animated musicals and other animated musicals, I could probably count on my fingers the number of live action musicals that I really, really enjoy. And so I was going into this knowing there were going to be some, what in my head I thought were silly song and dance numbers. And I really liked the as ridiculous as it is, I really liked the big dance number at the party when the white guy is kind of challenging them to the dance.
Mm-hmm.
I just I was surprised that I got into it as much as I did. I was just like really excited about it.
Yeah, no, it was definitely. I think there was an intention, except for in the end when they went all out with the musical like ending. But it definitely seemed like that the musical moments they kept still as kick-ass. Like they try to keep them, because this was like very testosterone heavy, like the whole bromance thing. So they didn't want to go too jolly. on the stuff until I think in the end, then they went very colorful and very like you see how they kind of like let loose
Yeah.
in the end. So there's definitely intention there for sure. They didn't break it completely and just went full Broadway or something,
No.
in the middle of the movie. It was an integration of it. Like it's sort of like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, like putting in their musical numbers and everything that they do, even if it's not a musical per se, and they still keep it within the same tone of whatever it is. They don't completely like lose the plot. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys something, or not even really ask so much as just kind of talk about this thing real quick. I was trying to figure out how to describe this movie and what it was that was so different about it. And of course, obviously, what's different about like Bollywood films in general and stuff like that compared to American films and films from other countries as well. And I didn't want to say something stupid like like, oh well, it's different because of this and because of culture, whatever. But I was just trying to figure out a good way to describe it. And something that I came across that somebody said, it really felt like kind of like a puzzle piece falling into place, because I was like, that's the right way to think about it. But both of you guys were kind of mentioning earlier, kind of like how the positive aspects of how far this movie pushes you,
Mm-hmm.
Suspension of disbelief, of course, being an important element and things like that. And naturally, anytime you have any people singing on screen, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that you need to be able to reach. I just got done talking about how I don't generally like musicals, and one of the main reasons for that is because obviously it pushes your suspension of disbelief. It's more difficult to maintain when you see something that your brain knows is not very realistic, not the way it would actually happen in real life, kind of thing. And I liked the way this guy described this. This guy was talking about not just American movies, but really most movies outside of India. For the most part, I guess it's like most movies really value immersion as a very positive thing. And when I thought about that, that's what it really made it just click in my head, because that's what it is like, I feel like when I'm watching a bad musical and people start singing, or even just a bad movie and people start doing, and the movie takes a twist that they definitely shouldn't have because it was poorly written or something like that, it breaks that level of immersion. It really pushes your brain to keep accepting what you're seeing, and it ruins the immersion level. But you can have a movie where it's very aware of itself, a movie that's entirely different than this, that it came to my mind when I was thinking about this was like the movie Deadpool, because that's got a character that's literally talking to the audience and breaking the fourth wall. Gil, you mentioned 300. That's a movie that's so over the top that it's clearly not as interested in the concept of immersion, because you're being taken out of it every time you see something that's just so ridiculous, but yeah, it's just this something that I thought was interesting when it's this guy was saying how Indian cinema does not value immersion the same way that nearly all other forms of cinema do. And I don't know, that's probably not good or bad. It's just something that makes it very different.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I agree with that assessment. Like it's like an immersion thing. I just think that it's a different type of immersion. They just see movies as a different thing. Like for one thing, music is very big there. They value music very much so. Let's say to the same degree that American audiences value action. Like just like American audiences need an action scene every 10, 20 minutes, otherwise they get bored. They need a musical number, otherwise they get bored.
Yeah, but
So
there's thousands of movies in the world that have tons of music in them. There's movies that have almost nonstop music that where like you don't even get 3 minutes of screen time without some sort of music playing, but it's not always a musical number.
oh no, yeah, but there's something about song and dance in India. That's what I'm saying. Like there's specifically about like the characters need to be singing because it like brings joy to like the audience. It's a crowd pleaser in some way. And and going back to the other examples like 300, the Sergio Leone thing, even like we discussed like the French New Wave, they're doing all the breaking the fourth wall and stuff. They jump cuts and stuff. They pioneered like doing a lot of like crazy over the top stuff just for the sake of playing with the grammar of cinema. And it's not to say that any of these movies, directors, or movements, it's not that they didn't value immersion, is that they thought movies can be more than just a representation of reality. They are an escape, and you can have all sorts of an escape. You can have something that's brutally realistic, almost boringly so, but then like but that has its own impact on you.
Right.
And then you can go, I mean, a good example would be, I mean, you take the beginning of like Saving Private Ryan, and that's like the closest thing to what it would be to be in a battle,
Yeah.
right? And then you take something like Son of Soul, where that's um, it's not exactly what it would be to be a person in the Holocaust, but it uses a cinematic device, much like the movie Mother, that kind of copied that concept, um, by clinging you to one character and obstructing you from seeing anything else. That it suffocates um, your your breathing, your perception, in order to have like an impact. So like one is representing reality as impactfully as possible, and one is going completely in a different direction, but still representing a concept of reality, but using it in a very, very different way.
Right.
So
And I don't disagree with anything that you just said at all. I'm just wondering, there's hundreds of and hundreds of ways that you can like tell a story cinematically and use the language of film to do that in different ways, compelling ways. And you could even make the argument that there's no wrong way to do something, just better ways, you know, and
or different, like not necessarily better, but
well,
different. Yeah,
and of
because
course that's
it
a
could
subjective thing
fail.
too.
Yeah, it could fail miserably
I
if it's
mean,
not.
if you could say, like for instance, I think it would be foolish for someone to say there's no way to take the movie Rear Window and make that into a musical. And then somebody would be like, of course you can. And then they'd go and do it. But then I think, even if that person was like a master filmmaker, I think the vast majority, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and just say this. I think the vast majority of the people who would sit down and watch the two movies back to back would be like, I think Hitchcock did it better. You know, I mean, just saying that there's objectively things you can just kind of, art is always subjective, of course, to some degree, but I think a lot of people can come to a certain consensus and say that some stuff tends to be better than others. But all I'm getting at is that I really like this, and I really like that you mentioned earlier you compared it to like 300 is a nice thing to compare it to because it's so over the top, you know. But if I was watching movies as often as I do, which is to say, let's just say about 5 movies a week or something like that, sometimes 20 movies a week, but probably not that often, that many, but still, um, a movie like this, especially because of its length, but also just it's the style in which it's told and everything like that. Um, I don't know if there's that many movies that I would find very suitable, very many stories that I would find very suitable for this kind of storytelling. I don't know if I'd want to see very many movies like this more than, say, once a month or something like that. So I wonder to myself if their entire if every movie that is made in Bollywood is like Matt was saying, has a lot of these same elements to it, and a lot of the same, if this is the style and this is how it is, I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of stories that doesn't lend it themselves well to this kind of storytelling.
Well, it's a good example because I tend to agree that, because you gave the Rear Window example. If you gave this story, the RRR story, the whole Two Revolutionaries, the Lawrence of Arabia treatment, you went full on serious.
Yeah.
It probably would be a better movie. It could be a 9. Like if it's done really, really well, like really well. I'm talking like a classic, like an all-time classic. That's very tough to pull off.
Very tough.
But and the least it could be like a 7 or a 8, but it might be a snore. It could be very boring if it's not the same
In the wrong
presentation.
hands.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you can probably, I agree. Like, you take a Rear Window, it's like a timeless classic. Obviously, it's going to be tough to make it into a musical and have it be as successful as the original movie.
Well, they turned a Shia LaBeouf remake of it into a fairly financially successful movie. I mean, you can do that. You can do anything.
Yeah.
Say what?
No.
Yeah,
the
Disturbia.
Disturbia.
Oh my God! I forgot that movie existed.
Yeah.
I almost did until you mentioned the musical of Rear Window idea, and oh shit, you put that movie back in my brain, you son of a bitch.
Sorry, man. I'm very sorry.
Well, if anything, I think they've shown that you can take a lot. Broadway has shown in recent years that you can take a lot of movies and make them into musicals that they weren't before, and they end up being very successful shows. There's even an Israeli movie that was made into a musical, like The Band's Visit, and it's like immensely successful. I see what you're saying about you wouldn't have the appetite for it for one reason or another, because you have your preferences. I totally understand that. At the same time, I think there is a place for a movie like this that's completely over the top and to be an all-time great. And
Absolutely.
it's called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Like, it's been proven. Like, you can do a movie that's completely over the top with almost like no plot. It almost doesn't make sense that it works, but it defies gravity. It just does. And there's a few other examples for this. I mean, Pulp Fiction also is probably like Tarantino's masterpiece, and that movie is completely over the top.
Yeah, but I mean, on a scale of over the top of 1 to 10, I mean, if this movie's like a 9, or something like that, like those movies, while I totally agree with you, they are over the top, and it's great to compare this to The Good, the Bad, the Ugly because of its epic length, and everything. But really, those are like 5s.
5s. What's a 5? Oh, as far as like the over the topness.
On a scale of how over the top something gets, those don't really breach anything more than about 5.
Oh yeah, no. This movie is an exercise in going over the top for sure. Much like 300 was. Yeah, and an example that maybe it's not as successful is like the Snyder Cut would be like a recent example. Like
I was thinking, I was actually, to his credit, I was thinking Snyder too. I was going to say Sucker Punch, but yeah.
Which I haven't seen, but I'm assuming it's probably also over the top. but yes, like, can over the topness go overboard? No, there's no question. Yeah, for sure.
God, there's so many examples of that.
I mean, like go for Terrence Malick, like Terrence Malick or like Tarkovsky for that matter. Like, those are like two very unique filmmakers that had a very specific type of style, and both of them go too far, just too much, too far, and it just doesn't really work. It seems like it works for some people, especially Tarkovsky, but even diehard Malick fan admit that, like, when he kind of went like 4 movies in a row, he's like, okay, just slow down there, like, big boy. Like, it's these movies are like getting less and less consequential, and and you're not giving us anything fresh. So yeah, I think it's a matter of like finding the balance, even though balance in whatever the over the top style that you have, like you gotta dial it correctly
Yeah.
to what the story is, you can't always just do whatever you want, like
No.
a Snyder or a Malick. Like you're gonna have some misses unless you really like fine tune your your where you are
Mhm.
to what the movie is calling for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good way of putting it. What it's calling for.
yeah, but I think that there's another layer to this that I was kind of thinking about, which is I, the filmmaker, just as a component in this whole thing. Like the reason why a movie like RRR works, a movie, or certain other Indian films that have come over that are over the top musicals, willing suspension of disbelief, but still make Fast and the Furious look tame in terms of their action sequences and like the physics and everything. There's it comes from a culture where you can take it, where the filmmaker is taking it seriously. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't think that anybody who makes those like Fast and Furious movies or anything is actually like shooting the movie and actually taking it seriously himself. I think they're making those movies and laughing just as much as they hope that the audience is going to be laughing at it. And I think that there's always going to be that cultural component to it, which is why again I think that there's an element of as Americans, we should be. I mean, again, we should appreciate and we should learn, but I mean, there's like this weird lost in translation thing that's always going to exist, where we just we're going to always have this. I think we were just always brought up in our cinema, and we're going to always have this block where there's a certain amount of uh, we can't take this as seriously until we really dive into the entire culture and dive into the entire realize that these okay, like here, this is why the Disney live action remakes suck, like overwhelmingly. Like we were brought up forever willing to suspend our disbelief with animation. Okay, I mean, how the hell are they going to have Sebastian sing "Under the Sea" in the remake of The Little Mermaid?
I mean,
And
if their track record is anything to go off of, like Beauty and the Beast, I think they're just going to CGI a crab and actually have him singing it.
yeah, and it's going to fall right on its face, just like The Lion King and everything like that. But it's just I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, even though people keep shelling out money to go see them, people are really panning them, right and left. Because I mean, we don't take this seriously. We only have this myopic view. Well, I mean, I think the our view right now of animation being more conducive to musicals rather than live action is generally more correct. But Bollywood actually has this so ingrained in their culture and in their ideas that they but they still know when to call it quits. I mean, I think that if they do have a CGI crab singing Under the Sea in the new Little Mermaid, Disney would have jumped the willing suspension of disbelief shark more than any Bollywood movie ever made.
I
But
I haven't seen nearly enough of their cinema to chime in on that. But let me ask you a question, Matt,
okay,
and
all right.
Gil, actually. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but just based on what you guys both kind of said in the last 5 minutes or so,
Mhm.
I mean, you're talking about the cultural differences and being brought up in their culture, and for that reason having a certain tolerance of this and so on and so forth. But I mean, obviously a lot of people in India get movies from other countries
Yeah.
as well. I'm
Yes, of
assuming that
course.
like us, we only get over here. We really tend to only get the hits, that come from other countries for the most part. I think it's probably. I'm sure that they see a lot of the big hits of ours a lot more than they see the average stuff that doesn't do so well. But
Yeah.
still, I would assume that there's film lovers and people like that try to seek out, let's just say, people in India that are watching stuff from Japan and stuff from France and stuff from
Hmm.
us, over here and everything. um I mean, do you think that Indian people who are watching these movies, do you feel that they are not feeling the same way we are? You think that just because of their culture that they're not also, that they don't laugh at some of this stuff that is funny and roll their eyes at some of the stuff that's over the top, just
No, no,
because they were brought up that way?
no. I'm not saying. I mean, I'm sure that they do laugh at some of the over the top stuff. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of the stuff in RRR that's actually just generally funny, no matter how you put it, and intended to be funny. Clearly, like geez, what's his face? Sorry, to the Bahim thinking that Jenny's name was everything that she told him about, don't call
Oh,
me. Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
But
that she
I'm
has
talking
this.
about the over the top
Yeah.
stuff, like when
Right.
they have an entire action sequence where he's
Yeah.
standing on the other guy's shoulders.
Yeah. No,
I was
I
laughing my ass off the whole time through that.
yeah.
Also, somewhat
Yeah.
acknowledging that to some level, there's probably some people taking this a little more seriously than me. But I can't imagine that there's
Yeah.
people over there just going
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is what I've been missing all this time." Yes, yeah. I mean, they're probably laughing too.
Yeah, of course. No,
Oh no, yeah, that's a
yeah.
comedic like scene. Like that's partially
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah. I don't want to come off as saying, oh yeah, those Indian people, they're all just they,
They're all just silly.
Very dismissive.
yeah,
Silly
yeah.
gooses.
No, they think this is totally realistic if you just have enough training. No, I'm sure that they got a lot of laughs, all over the world with that sequence, and it's really funny. It is, and it's really effective. But what I'm saying is that I think that there's an element there where they don't, at least their cinema is able to, well, they feel more able to have those kinds of moments, and then uh, I mean, well, have those kinds of moments right after a really tearful emotional scene. Or and like the highs and lows. I mean, I mean, really, I think that Indian cinema, as far as I can tell, is kind of the antithesis of Russian cinema. Russian
Mm.
cinema finds a tone and just sticks with it, and it bores into you, and well, at least with their dramas. Whereas uh, Indian cinema tends to be a lot more highs and lows. I mean, a lot of their movies seem like they're structured like songs. There's builds and dips, and like, well, I mean, by songs I mean more. I don't know. I'm going to stop talking now because I got into a territory that I don't know anything about.
No, but I think I don't think that's unlike American movies, like
Yeah.
the roller coaster ride aspect of it. But yes, the fact that tonally. But the thing is, I do feel like this movie is consistent tonally. I don't think that they go too far at times. Like they went pretty far in the beginning. That they basically gave themselves a lot of leeway with like where they can go. I don't think the scene with him over his shoulders is the only comedic scene
No, no,
in the
no.
movie. So like
No.
it's definitely been established that like yeah, it's gonna be comedy, it's gonna be song and dance, it's gonna be a lot of violent action. and it's gonna be like on this historical tapestry of like how they, how the revolution started. I think all that, like, there's movies that there's examples of American movies that do similar things, just not to the same absurd, like farcical, like, like extent, but
Mm,
but I mean, like you look at, like, Scott Pilgrim. That's another example. Like, it's a movie that's very over the top, but it knows what it's doing. Like, most of Edgar Wright's movies are a little bit over the top, and that's
That one in
just
particular, though.
but that one in particular, he pulls all the stops. Like, it's a lot of visual gags and things like that, and you go with it. It's not believable, but while you're watching it, it's Kubrick, I think, had a thing about, if it was The Shining, but one of his movies, but like his thing always, like what he was concerned about, he was really concerned that people wouldn't get with his movies. Like, he had this, like he knew what he was doing, he knew what he liked, but he was always concerned because he was coming for
mm,
this approach that movies are supposed to be a heightened version of reality, and that's
Yeah.
more satisfying. But sometimes you would be concerned that because he's going for that, some people would just not believe they're watching a movie, and it would just completely crash and burn. I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Spielberg at one point told him, like, I didn't understand, like, why you directed, like, Jack Nicholson that way, because he's a great actor, but his performance there is really over the top. And then he told him, like, oh, well, who's your favorite actor? And he told him, like, well, Jimmy Stewart. I was like, well, what about James Cagney? Wasn't he a good actor? He's like, oh yeah, it's a good point. And then, like, the more Spielberg saw the movie, the more he realized what Kubrick and Jack Nicholson were going for. That it's almost like a theatrical version of what that thing, like a theater performance. Like, it's so over the top that it's engrossing to watch as long as you go with it. Spielberg was just not going with it the first time, but once you
Yeah.
realize what the movie's trying to do, then it's very satisfying. But that fear that, like, people will just get off the ride and just
Yeah.
not go along is it's a concern. That's why
Well, it
people,
happens, I think, with lesser movies.
yeah, and I think it's always a concern. And it's, you got to take risks. You have to. I mean, that's the
Oh
only way
yeah.
to make movies. But yeah, one thing I would say about the RRR is, I looked at the ratings because I was curious about the 8.0 thing,
Yeah.
and even though there's like 57,000 people out of the 100,000 gave it a 10, there's like 5,500 people that give it like a 1. So, there's a lot of people that would just like watch a movie like that and be like, "Oh my God, what is this? This is ridiculous," and just
Hmm.
not even watch the whole thing and give it a 1. Um, so, that's movies. That's like, yeah, however you
Mm.
reacted, you reacted.
Yeah.
Well, no matter what, if you're a filmmaker, well, if you're an artist in general, you're bearing your soul to the world and letting them kick the shit out of you. Uh,
Essentially.
and like at least running the real risk that everybody's going to hate you. Fortunately, it looks like most people like this, and I liked this, and you like this. We all like, all three of us like this. It's and I, but I mean, the good thing, at least for me, uh, I can say that I've at least seen enough movies from India. I can say that it's not the formula that I like; it's the movie that I like.
Yeah.
There, I've seen a lot of movies that follow the same, again, 3-hour musical formula that we're so used to with films that get imported uh, uh, to these United States by India. Uh, and I mean, they've all kind of been, just like with Russian films, French films, Japanese, whatever, Chinese. They're all kind of hit and miss. But this is just a good movie.
Yeah.
It's just a really good movie. It's fun. It has substance. It has a message.
It has
um,
style.
yeah,
Yeah.
and and even though it does at least loosely fit into the formula that we're used to with Indian cinema, again, at least here in this country, I- you know, this movie is kind of unique. It has a voice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say like one thing I was before I forget the it just is so weird like that scene with they're trying to capture a wolf and then they end up capturing a tiger. And the payoff for that is so ridiculous. Like it was like, why do they capture these animals? And then when they it's got to be one of the stupidest way to try and like save their sister is like to let's just unleash 20 of these wild animals at a party and distract everybody and just hope they don't kill us in the process. It seems like a poorly like designed plan, not to mention the difficulty of capturing these animals, but it's gloriously fun. Like it's just otherwise you wouldn't have that scene. Like it wouldn't
It's such an amazing scene. I mean, how often do you get a movie where this ridiculously strong guy took the time to capture all these animals and then lets them loose, and then they put enough thought into it where they're like, we don't want it to be like he's the animal whisperer. It's not like they're not attacking him. He's dodging the animals, and it's just such a target-rich environment that they're all attacking the other. They miss him, and they have plenty of other British troops to attack, and so that's how he's surviving. And then at one point, like what I have to assume is a 150 to 200 pound leopard jumps on his back, and his solution is to chuck it at a man.
Yeah, no, it's oh wow, what I was gonna say now I forgot, but I was gonna say something
Sorry.
about no, it's okay because you were saying that, but I was the ridiculousness of it. Yeah, like that you wouldn't have that scene like
Oh yeah.
that scene wouldn't exist. I think there was an example of that before, maybe even a prior podcast or something, but like the only thing I can think of is Princess Bride is another like movie of an example where like things that are ridiculous for a reason because then they pay off like later on, things like that. But yeah, but I can't remember the exact example right now. But anyways, go ahead.
I found 4 white horses.
Yeah. That was so crazy. Like that was really something else. Like it's just like you couldn't even think of a like a worse plan. Ay, ay, ay. But that's why I think it works. It works because it makes no sense. Like it has to not make any sense.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, I guess I'll come back to something more to relate to what Matt was saying. Is that it is like this movie? It got to be like a top 10 like bromance movies of all time. Like the bromance aspect of this and the like these are the two greatest warriors of all time in India and there's this the bond between them and the consequences of what they're fighting for. There's that moment where he tells them that I came for my sister, you came for the land. All these like very powerful
Yeah.
moments that you really wouldn't think to see in such a ridiculous movie. This is like a almost like a Leslie Nielsen level, ridiculousness. But to have that paired, the only thing I could relate it to is like it's Matt Stone and Trey Parker. Like that's the level of ridiculousness would be that high, but would also be incredibly substantial and intelligently designed.
The you were comparing it to like bromance stuff, and I just thought uh the first scene where the two characters meet to save that little boy that's down in the water.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only is it really well done and just beyond over the top ridiculous. Like, you can't think of a better way to save that boy. You've got a motorcycle and a rope. You can't just like lower one of the guys down, grab the guy, and then tie it to the bike and pull them back up. No, we're gonna do this ridiculous thing where we swing simultaneously on two sides of the bridge, and then thematically the Herculean strength, villager guy, it represents water, and the other guy represents fire, and they're swinging towards the kid to save him. One of them takes a flag, and their country's flag, and douses it in the river's water so that he could toss it to the other guy who tosses the kid to him, so that when he goes back through the inferno, he can wrap a wet flag around him to survive. And then they swing back together, and they're gonna, die in the fire if they don't stop themselves. So they reach out and grab each other's arms, and and introduce each other to themselves to each other, then drop down into the water, where they have this ridiculously over the top moment of them running through the water, like in slow motion underwater, to have a bromance handshake that I did not think was possible, but they actually managed to top the Predator handshake. Like,
Yeah.
as a more manly handshake. They did it in a more over-the-top ridiculous movie, but still, like, I didn't think anything could top that. But when they're, after just saving a child like that and having fire over their head, and them just miraculously holding their breath for God knows how long underwater, and there's just for them to run up to each other and be like, ah!
The funny thing is the least likely thing about that whole sequence is how the fuck would he know that this random person
was going to be capable.
capable of doing that? Like, there's got to be some sort of like love at first sight. Like he foresaw it or something. He saw it in him. So I don't know. It's just
badass knows badass. That's all I can say.
yeah, but a few other things I was gonna say. I also found it very amusing that they have the whole like essentially a Greek tragedy choir interludes where they have the singing in between scenes, like explaining the whole thing about like this is a very like the like bad turn of events, like they were first friends and now they're like enemies, and like the whole like just completely on the nose, like let's explain to you what's going on just in case you're not following along, you know. It's I found that like ridiculous, but the best thing is one of my favorite things is and I don't know how I'm relating this to it, but like I listened to a podcast recently about Tango and Cash, and they're saying about like and they're saying how like that was the first movie where Stallone was kind of making fun of himself because there was a scene where they say like he thinks he's Rambo. He says like Rambo was a pussy. Like Stallone says that line, and and there's the moment in this movie towards the end when he's got, for one thing, he gets like a bow and arrow from a sculpture. And he gets a soldier of the god, and he gets some superpower by like sprinkling some powder from the sculpture on him because he was completely debilitated, but I guess he regained all his power.
Did not work anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But then like where they completely like either lost me or won me over is when he started like shooting grenades like with the bow.
Yes.
And all I could think of is like Rambo. It's like,
Rambo
wow,
3.
Rambo is a pussy. Like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
yeah.
just killed me. Like it's like, oh my god, they didn't go there. Like he just didn't take grenades. It's like just put them on.
And he starts in that scene. I think they ride like a motorcycle at him or something, and the other guy just like kicks the motorcycle or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff there towards the end. The funny thing is, like, you do kind of wonder, like, how did they top everything they had this to this point? And I really thought, like, oh, it's just gonna be like them and a few soldiers in the woods. This can't top everything they had till now. But oh boy, like the stuff with
Oh
the
boy.
with the grenades and the throwing the motorcycle. Isn't there like a thing where he shoots the motorcycle at
I think
something?
so. Yeah, I can't remember.
It's like so ridiculous. Oh yeah, and like he and that's how he blows up the whole like mansion. Like he
Hmm.
because he shoots
Yeah.
like an arrow into like like the flaming arrow into the ammunition.
Yeah.
Wow, that was just like that was something else. uh yeah, no, that was definitely a very satisfying movie. Yeah, I wonder, like, this is the type of movie like that I would want to like hear what Tarantino has to say about it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like just if they liked it or not. It's just so crazy.
I love the backstory of the soldier guy when they finally reveal all this stuff, and his I can't remember if it's his father, I think, or his uncle or somebody who's the only one who's actually like a soldier. He's trying to train these men, and he shows him that like one guy, determined guy with a rifle can do so much. But that scene is just so memorable. He's like, load.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a good casting there. The father was very impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just like some of these like scenes, like how the fuck are they gonna get out of this? And somehow, like realistically, like and somehow they find a way to like make it seem plausible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning. I like the something that I feel is kind of missing these days a little bit in some movies, at least. You do see it sprinkled in here and there, but the actor dedication, the scene where the in the very beginning, after that insane scene where the guy is fighting the entire riot all by himself.
Mhm.
There's, I think, I'm trying to remember what happens. Like, he doesn't get the promotion he was looking for or something like that. He gets very mad for some reason. And there's like a training montage where he's in a
He
gym.
doesn't get he doesn't get a medal or anything.
Oh yeah.
Like
Whatever
yeah.
it was. Yeah. And it's like the dude's in there like working out with the punching bag or something. And I was just like, geez, this guy's cut out of stone.
Yeah. No, he's definitely in shape. What was that thing where like he punctures a hole in it? And
Yeah.
it was also funny, like it was kind of crazy, like how he like he gets that venom from that snake, and then he comes back and he's like so in shape already, like when most people probably wouldn't be able to move. Like he told him, like you'll be okay by tomorrow, and then he like that also was a bit too much. The fact that like he recovers that quickly from the venom is a bit of a stretch, but
Yeah.
but I guess it's a movie of stretching. So what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?